This happened about a year ago. I was 32 and worked as a nurse on the night shift at a small community hospital. I thought I knew what to expect. Just me and the patients, getting through the long nights. I also had my aging mother to care for at home. It wasn't too bad. On my third night, I was doing rounds when I heard a soft tapping from room 207. The room had been empty for days. A patient had gone home. It sounded like someone was knocking from inside. I figured it was a loose chair or maybe a vent. But it felt different. The tapping was steady, almost rhythmic. It made me uneasy. The next night, the tapping changed. I thought I heard whispers, soft voices echoing in the hallway. They were calling my name. I shook my head, trying to clear the fatigue away. Just my mind playing tricks, I told myself. I went about my work. But the whispers kept growing louder, like they were drawing me in. I felt goosebumps on my arms, then I found a small toy outside room 207. It was a little stuffed bear. I was sure it hadn't been there before. My heart raced. I looked around, wondering if someone had played a prank. The hallway was empty. I picked it up and held it for a moment. It felt cold in my hands. On another shift, I met a new patient in room 210. She was an elderly woman, very sweet, but she told me something strange. I see a little girl at night, she said, her eyes wide. I felt a chill. A girl with pigtails. She sits on my bed and giggles. I asked her to describe the girl. She's just playful, the woman said, waving her hand. I glanced back at room 207. Just a playful girl, I thought, squeezing the bear a little tighter. As the nights went by, that feeling of dread wouldn't leave me. I found myself standing outside room 207, straining to hear the whispers. They were louder now, like they were calling me directly. My heart raced, and I felt like I was being pulled inside. One particularly chilly night, I stood there frozen. I took a deep breath and knocked softly. Is anyone in there? Silence. A knot twisted in my stomach. I was about to knock again when I felt something behind me. The air grew heavy. I turned slowly. Why are you with her? A small voice whispered. I spun back to the doorway. It was empty. I felt like my heart stopped. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. There was nobody there. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I stood there, my fingers trembling. My mind raced. What just happened? What happened next? I still don't understand those experiences. I can't shake the feeling they were real. The whispers, the stuffed bear, the little girl. Did I really hear them, or was my mind just playing tricks? I wish I could tell you I knew, but I don't. I couldn't sleep after that night. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty doorway of room 207. I felt like I had opened a door I shouldn't have. The air felt charged with something unexplainable. My mind replayed that whisper over and over. Why are you with her? The next shift, I tried to stay focused. I reminded myself that I had patients to care for. But every time I passed room 207, I could feel a presence. I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. The hour felt thick with tension, and I shivered as I approached the door. Instead of the mechanical sounds of the hospital, it was silent. Then, I noticed something. The door was slightly ajar. I hesitated. I should just check it, I told myself, but my feet felt anchored to the floor. Finally, curiosity surged through me, and I pushed the door open. Even the light from the hallway felt dim as I stepped inside. The space was empty, just as it had been for days. But on the floor, I saw something, not just the bare tiles. It was the stuffed bear I had found the other night, only now it looked different. Its button eyes seemed to glint in the low light. Suddenly, I heard a giggle. My heart raced. I was sure it wasn't my imagination. I turned, quickly scanning the room. Nothing but shadows. I had to get out. I was about to back away when I saw a crumpled piece of paper resting on the bed. That I stepped closer, my hands trembling. The paper was yellowed, clearly aged. I unfolded it slowly. There were drawings of a little girl, the same one the patient in room 210 had described. Pigtails, a playful grin, surrounded by scribbles of hearts and stars. At the bottom, in jagged handwriting, it read, "They won't let me go home." A chill ran through me. Then, the giggle came again, louder. This time, it felt like it was right beside me. I stumbled backward, my pulse pounding in my ears. I turned and rushed out into the hallway, shutting the door behind me. I leaned against it, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. Anna. It was the elderly woman from room 210. Her voice was suddenly frantic. She appeared at the other end of the hallway. "You need to help her." Her eyes were wide with a mix of worry and urgency. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach once again. "The little girl. She's scared. She needs to find her way home." I felt the blood drain from my face. And then, as if summoned into existence, I heard the whisper again, stronger this time, more insistent. "Help me." I froze again, caught in a web of confusion and fear. I had to make a choice. Would I face whatever was haunting the halls, or would I leave it behind? I felt paralyzed, staring into the shadows of the hallway. The urgency in the woman's eyes rattled something deep inside me. I had to help. But could I? What if I walked right back into something I couldn't escape? "Where is she?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Room 207. Go. You have to find her." Before I could second-guess my decision, I turned and rushed back to the door. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the sterile walls. I could feel a rush of energy swirling around me, almost pushing me forward. As I stepped inside room 207, I felt a ping of dread. The dim light touched the small, empty space, but this time, I was determined to confront whatever was making my heart race. The stuffed bear sat in the corner, the same spot I had seen before. I approached it cautiously. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response came, but a chill crept down my spine. Then I saw it, beneath the bear, a small white envelope lay hidden. My breath caught in my throat as I reached for it. Inside the envelope was a small photograph of a girl, smiling brightly with her pigtails bouncing, just like in the drawings. But something about the photo made my stomach twist. The girl's eyes looked hollow. It was as if they were begging me to understand something I wasn't getting. "Who are you?" I mumbled to the empty room. I flipped the photo over and found something written in the same jagged handwriting. "I am still here." Suddenly, I heard the door to the room slam behind me. I jumped, my heart racing as I spun around. I was alone again, wasn't I? Then I felt it. The air shifted, heavy and cold, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. "Please," a small voice breathed, chillingly clear. I turned, searching the dim corners of the room. "Help me," it echoed. That I wanted to run, to escape this horrifying encounter. But a part of me felt anchored. I took a deep breath and said, "What do you need?" At that moment, the photographs fell from my hands, scattering across the floor. I bent down to collect them, but when I looked up, the girl was there. Just behind me, her transparent figure shimmered. She looked so real, yet so distant, like a fading memory. "I can't find my way back," she said, her voice barely a whisper as she extended her hand toward me. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. Before I could process what was happening, the lights flickered, and the room darkened. I took a step back, my body screaming for escape. Then I heard it, the giggle again, but it now echoed from all corners of the shadows. "I'll help you," I managed to say, though doubt clawed at my insides. I will. But before I could step closer, the entire room grew dark, and everything went still. The whispers stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. What just happened? Then, the door creaked open behind me. I hesitated, not wanting to confront what waited outside. I turned towards the doorway, my heart racing. And that's when I saw a figure standing in the threshold, the outline of a small girl with pigtails and a twisted grin. My breath caught in my throat. "Help me," she whispered again. I was trapped, lost in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I blinked, staring at the silhouette in the doorway. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet I felt rooted in place, caught in an invisible web. The figure waited, her head tilted slightly, a mockery of innocence shading her twisted smile. "Who are you?" I croaked, the question barely making it past my lips. The air felt thicker, pressing down on me. The girl stepped forward, and I could see her more clearly. Her eyes were dark pools, devoid of warmth, like two dangerous voids that threatened to pull me in. "They don't want me to leave," she said, her voice a soft sing-song that echoed in the dim light. "But I want to play." "Play what?" I managed to ask, though dread crawled up my spine at her words. I felt like I was in the wrong game, one where the rules favored the unseen. She pointed toward the corner of the room. Without thinking, I turned, and the once empty space suddenly seemed alive. I saw a section of the wall trembling as if it breathed. A round of laughter spilled from it, a high-pitched sound that resonated in a way that sent shivers through me. "Stop!" I shouted, spinning back to her. "What do you want? Please, just tell me." Her grin widened. "It's so much fun, you'll see." She laughed again, but this time it turned into a hollow cackle that made me sick to my stomach. I clutched the envelope still grasped in my hand, desperation clawing at my mind. The envelope could hold a key, but was I brave enough to find out? I glanced toward the door, the fleeting idea of escape hovering at the edges of my thoughts. But there she was, enchanting and terrifying. "Help me," she said again, and somehow, her voice wrapped itself around me, an invisible chain binding me to the moment. "Okay," I said recklessly, fueled by urgency. "But you need to tell me what you want from me." Suddenly, the walls themselves felt alive, vibrating with a strange energy that pricked at my skin. "You have to choose," the girl said, her smile now wide enough to reveal teeth that glimmered with something sinister. "Play or leave." Before I could respond, the photographs around me began to swirl in the air, floating like leaves caught in a gust of wind. The room spun, the laughter rising in intensity, drowning out my racing heart. I reached for the girl, but she was slipping through my fingers, like grabbing smoke. "Stop!" I shouted again, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of sound. My surroundings blurred, and darkness threatened at the edges of my vision, then silence. Everything abruptly came to a standstill. I staggered back against the wall, panting, heart hammering against my chest. The girl had vanished, all that remained was the stuffed bear and the envelope crumpled in my palm. What had just happened? Questions swirled in my mind, swimming through the fog of confusion. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself, but that's when I noticed something. In the bottom corner of the envelope, a new piece of paper had appeared, folded neatly, with a single word scrawled across it: "Run." Before I could process its meaning, I heard footsteps approaching from the darkened hall. Someone was coming. My blood ran cold. I fought the urge to scream as I slipped the envelope into my pocket and flicked off the light. Heart pounding, I pressed myself against the wall, hoping to blend into the shadows. Who was coming? And what would they want from me now? The footsteps stopped outside the door. I held my breath, waiting for the creak of the doorknob, but it didn't come. Instead, I heard the slow exhale of a figure collecting itself. My instinct screamed at me to move, but all I could do was stand there in the dark, hoping to remain unnoticed. Then, a low voice seeped through the door. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" It was deep and calm, but there was something about it that felt wrong. An undercurrent of impatience, perhaps, or a hint of something darker. Whoever it was, they didn't sound friendly. I squinted through the door's crack, the faint glow of the hallway light revealing an outline. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stood in the hallway, his back turned to me. There was no mistaking the outline of his stance, guarded and tense. "Hello?" He called again, slightly louder this time. I knew I should have run, but I couldn't. The thought of leaving my hiding spot felt like stepping into a trap. My mind raced, replaying every eerie moment from before: the girl, the laughter, the envelope. None of it made sense, but it all circled back to the man now on the other side of the door. I stepped backward, hoping to find a way out if it came down to it, when I stumbled over something soft and fuzzy. The stuffed bear. I had forgotten about it completely. I cursed under my breath as I knelt to retrieve it, but in the flicker of light, I saw something else: a shadow moving behind the man in the doorway. Panic shot through me. I held my breath, feeling like I was about to be discovered. The shadow shifted, startlingly quick, but it remained hidden from my view. Was there more than one of them? Were they all part of this twisted game? "Please, it's important that you come out," the man urged softly, but there was a tension beneath his words. An urgency that made my skin crawl. "You don't want to stay in there?" I debated what to do. Every instinct told me to stay quiet, but deep down I felt an unshakable fear that I shouldn't ignore. As if sensing my hesitation, the man turned, his silhouette sharply outlined against the hallway light. When I saw it, the shadow detached from the wall, slinking toward him. It was darker than the surrounding darkness, a living shadow, and it twisted unnaturally, morphing into something grotesque. I wanted to scream, but my voice failed me, lost amidst the creeping dread. The man turned slowly, as if feeling the tension shift in the air. "No," he said, his voice suddenly harsh, turning back towards the doorway. "You can't be in there." In that moment, I was no longer a spectator. The chase was on. The shadow lunged at him, and I knew it was my chance. I pushed against the wall, ready to bolt. But as I stepped forward, I knocked the stuffed bear against the edge of the wall. It emitted a dull thud, a sound that echoed painfully in the stillness. "Who's there?" the man shouted, panic filling the air. The shadow twisted again, now focused on me. I had to run. I had to get out. But in that split second of indecision, I felt it, the tether that bound me to this place tightening. It called to me, and before I could fully comprehend, I found myself exiting the dark room, footsteps pounding against the floor as I raced into the unknown. And then, just like that, I was free, or so I thought. Because as I skidded around a corner, I saw her again, the girl, standing at the end of the hallway, blocking my way with that same twisted smile. "Want to play?" she asked, and I crashed headlong into the reality that this nightmare was far from over. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I stared at the girl. Her smile, sharp and unsettling, twisted something inside me. I wanted to turn back, but the presence behind me, that creeping shadow, made me freeze. "What do you mean, want to play?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. She took a step closer, almost gliding, and I noticed her clothes, the same dull hospital gown I was wearing, but hers looked worn, faded. "Don't you want to join?" she said, her eyes gleaming with a wild light. "There are so many games we can play. You've already found the envelope. Isn't that the best part?" I felt a cold sweat bead on my forehead. The envelope. A reminder of everything that had happened and how twisted this place really was. "What envelope?" I asked, hoping for an explanation. "Oh, you know," she giggled, "the one that leads you here." She gestured around, her fingers swirling in the air as if everything was part of her game. "It's all a part of the fun." A shiver ran down my spine. What she called fun felt like a trap. Behind me, I could hear footsteps again, heavy and deliberate. The man was advancing, and in the dim light, I saw glimpses of that shadow creeping along the walls. "Come play with us," she insisted, dragging the word, us, out like it was something sacred. I scanned the hallway desperately, seeking another way out, but the walls felt like they were closing in. I had to make a decision, and I could sense time slipping away. Stay away from me, I shouted, a burst of courage spilling out. I turned and darted around her, hoping to create some distance. My feet pounded against the cold tiles as I rushed toward the nearest exit, but I felt her laughter ringing behind me, echoing in the corridors that my mind raced. The last thing I remembered was the man in the hallway, the shadow lunging at him. I couldn't let myself get caught again. The world around me felt surreal, a warped reflection of my own fear. Suddenly, a door flew open just ahead, an old supply room. I dashed inside, slamming it shut, my back pressed against the door. The dim lights flickered, casting frantic shadows all around me. Inside, it smelled of antiseptic and something else, a hint of decay. That I took a moment to breathe, but the wall felt damp against my skin, and panic tightened in my chest. I could hear them outside, their voices low and conspiratorial, mixing with the sound of the shadow skirting along the floor. "Why are you hiding?" the girl called softly, almost taunting. "We just want to play." Then I noticed something that made my heart drop. There were faded drawings on the walls, crumpled and torn paper pinned next to shelves. They were all scribbled sketches of children, their eyes wide and terrified, their drawn bodies trapped in dark shapes. I stepped closer, my hand shaking as I touched one of the papers. "What is this?" I whispered, dread pooling in my gut. The drawings felt alive, and the shadows seemed to shift as if echoing the children's fear. Suddenly, I remembered the girl's smile. It wasn't just twisted, it was hungry. Someone was in this room with me, waiting. I could feel it. And then the door started to rattle. They were coming for me. The rattling grew more violent, the door shaking as if something beyond it was desperate to get in. I pressed my back harder against the cool surface, my heart pounding even louder. The girl's voice danced through the air, teasing and echoing, "It'll be more fun if you let us in." Panic clawed at my throat. I glanced around the room, searching for something, anything that could help me. My eyes fell on a metal cart in the corner, filled with old medical supplies. Bandages, syringes, and more papers lay haphazardly on top. I moved toward it, trying to make as little noise as possible, but every creak of the floor felt amplified in the silence. Then, a singular gasp escaped me. There, half buried beneath some old gauze, was a small, rusty scalpel. My fingers curled around it, feeling its coldness. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The door rattled again, more insistently this time. I could hear their whispers now, low and sinister. "Let us play. It's our turn." With a surge of desperation, I took a deep breath and readied myself. If they got in, I had to be prepared. Without warning, the door burst open. The girl stood there, her features twisted in a manic grin, and right behind her was the shadow, the man. He was partially obscured, the darkness swirling around him like a shroud. I could barely see his face, but I felt its cold gaze on me. I didn't think, I just acted. I lunged forward, wielding the scalpel like a weapon. "Stay back!" I shouted, filled with unfounded courage. My voice echoed harshly in the room. The girl let out a shrill laugh, unfazed by my threat. "You'll have to try harder than that," she taunted, stepping further inside. The shadow loomed closer, its form undulating as if it were alive. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to run. I darted to the side, intending to slip past them. But the girl was quick, darting in front of me with impossible speed. "You can't leave now, you haven't even begun to play." I hesitated, heart racing. The shadows grew more pronounced around the man, deepening in intensity as if feeding off the tension. The memories of the drawings surfaced in my mind. I recalled their terrified faces, the helplessness captured in ink. "Just let me go," I cried, my voice cracking, feeling the weight of fear pressing down hard. But my plea only ignited their amusement. The girl giggled, and the man took a step forward, a slow, deliberate action that felt like a death knell. That's when I saw a faint glow at the back of the supply room. It cut through the gloom like a beacon. "Look!" I shouted, pointing wildly. "What's that?" Both the girl and the shadow turned their attention to the glow, and for a split second, I seized the opportunity to break away. I dashed to the source, fumbling as I reached it, a small, flickering light bulb attached to a loose wire. It felt warm in my hand, like an unsteady lifeline. In that moment of desperation, I made a choice. If they wanted a game, I would give it to them, but on my own terms. "Let us see how you like the light," I yelled, flipping the light on. The room flooded with brightness, casting away some of the shadows. Their forms shrank back from the sudden illumination. The girl's laughter turned to a screech of frustration, while the shadow retreated slightly, dark tendrils curling around them, but it wasn't enough. I could feel the intensity of their presence growing. I sprinted towards the exit I could now see, adrenaline pushing me forward. The glow behind me flickered, and the panic-stricken whispers became frenzied chants, drowning my thoughts. I was almost free, almost out of reach, until I heard the girl call out one last time. "You can't escape our game forever." With those words echoing in my ears, I burst out of the supply room and into the hallway, the world beyond stretching out in front of me. I did not stop to look back. I sprinted down the corridor, desperately searching for safety, heart racing with the very real fear that the game was far from over. I dashed down the hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow that felt almost mocking. I glanced back once, half expecting to see the girl with her twisted grin or the shadowy figure pursuing me. But the corridor was empty, silent, too silent. I turned another corner, the stark white walls seeming to close in on me. Panic twisted tightly in my chest. Why were they in the hospital? This place was supposed to be a sanctuary, not a stage for their twisted game. My mind raced, searching for a safe place to hide. Then I spotted the nurse's station. I hurtled toward it, praying that someone would be there. Surely, in a lively hospital full of people, I could find help. But as I reached the counter, the seat behind it was empty. Papers were strewn across the surface, and the computer screen flickered, casting strange shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. There was no response. My heart sank deeper. I moved around the desk, peeking into the adjacent room, but all I found was silence. Just then, I heard the soft whisper of footsteps echoing behind me. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I turned slowly, scanning the dim corridor. The air felt thick, oppressive. The girl's voice drifted through the stillness, taunting. "We play by our rules now." Fear flooded my veins, and I darted back into the corridor, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, each one tugging at my resolve. I pressed forward, struggling to keep my breathing steady. Every door I passed felt like a potential trap, a gateway to another game I didn't want to play. The memories of the drawings haunted me, what they showed, what they didn't. The dread bubbled up inside me, threatening to burst. I needed a plan. I couldn't keep running aimlessly. I hurried to the nearest door marked storage. It squeaked open, revealing a cramped, shadowy room stacked high with boxes. As I stepped inside, I was hit with the smell of something stale. I quickly scanned the shelves, searching for anything that could help. That's when I found a heavy, dust-covered lantern tucked away in a corner. I yanked it out and examined it closely. If the light had worked before, maybe this could do the trick again. I fumbled to find the switch while listening intently for any sign of them. The whispers had quieted, but I sensed their presence lurking just out of sight. With a click, the lantern sputtered to life. A warm glow filled the room, extending to the edges of the darkness and pushing back the shadows. I felt a small thrill of hope. But it was short-lived. The moment the light flickered, a sudden chill swept through the room. I turned around to find the door swinging open behind me as if someone had pushed it from the other side. I could feel their energy, a palpable weight that pressed against my chest. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. The girl stood at the threshold, her smile broader than before, as if she relished this moment. Ready to play? Before I could react, the storage room plunged into cold darkness. The lantern's light extinguished, leaving me enveloped in a thick, suffocating void. I felt my heart leap into my throat. No! I screamed, desperation clawing at me as I searched for the door, blindly reaching toward the unknown, and just like that, I knew I was no longer in control. I was swallowed by darkness, the oppressive silence wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. My fingers brushed against the rough wall as I tried to navigate the room. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. Panic surged again, and I clawed my way toward the door. An icy gust of air pricked my skin, and in that moment, I felt it, a presence, cold and very near. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat. "Where are you?" I whispered into the void, my voice trembling. There was no answer, just the thudding of my heart and the rustling of something unseen. I had to find the light. I fumbled around the ground, hoping to find the lantern, when suddenly, a shrill laughter erupted nearby. I froze again, paralyzed by fear. It echoed through the tight space, bouncing off the walls, wrapping around me like a noose. "Why do you hide?" the girl mocked, her voice slinking between the shadows. "You can't escape." A surge of adrenaline pushed me forward, and I bolted for the door, throwing it open. The corridor greeted me with an eerie, flickering light, and I stumbled out, my eyes darting around. I was back in the hallway, but it felt different now, more sinister. Footsteps echoed behind me, rhythmic and deliberate. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one. Just the unsettling quiet and the feeling of being watched. I pressed on, moving deeper into the hospital's labyrinth, praying for some kind of escape. Looking around, I noticed something odd. The walls seemed to shift, the numbers on the doors changing as if mocking my confusion. Panic seized me. I had to find a nurse, someone who could help make sense of this madness. Then I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. A door marked Room 206 was slightly ajar, light spilling out into the hallway. Taking a deep breath, I approached the door. I could hear soft murmurs inside, laced with distress. Was someone trapped there? Maybe they needed help too. I hesitated before pushing the door open wider. What I found left me reeling. The room was empty. No patient, no equipment. Just a single chair placed in the center with a faint silhouette of a girl carved into the wall behind it, a faint trace of her twisted smile etched into the paint. Then, out of nowhere, the whispers returned, swirling around me. "You shouldn't have come here." My skin prickled with fear as I scanned the room, searching for the source of the voice. "Who are you?" I shouted, heart racing. "What do you want from me?" The lantern's light flickered in my mind, a distant memory, a signal of hope. If I could find it, I could push back against whatever darkness had taken hold of this place. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. My pulse quickened. I banged against the door, panic rising. But then I heard it again, the laughter louder this time, erupting from all directions. I backed away, dread settling in my stomach. "Let me out." Suddenly, a figure stepped into the light, silhouetted against the door. I squinted, but the face was obscured in shadows. "You're just starting to understand," it said, its tone dripping with malice. "Welcome to the game." As the words sank in, I knew one thing for certain: I was about to discover the true terror of this night. I stood frozen in the middle of Room 206, my heart racing as the laughter swirled around me like a whirlpool of dread. The silhouette of the girl in the wall seemed to beckon, and instinctively, I took a step back, trying to control the icy panic now coiling around my chest. "Let me out!" I shouted again, battering the door with my fists. But the laughter continued, punctuating my cries with mockery. They like to watch, the figure said, stepping partially into the light. The voice was familiar, cold yet gleeful. Once you're in, you can't escape. With a sudden burst of determination, I turned away from the door, scrolls of fear unfurling in my mind. This thing, whatever it was, already knew the game. I had to outsmart it. I dashed across the room, glancing back toward the wall, which felt alive with the faint echoes of the girl's visage. The laughter faded slightly, but it still felt as though shadows danced just beyond my sight. "Why are you hiding?" it called out, and I glanced wildly around, spotting an old supply cabinet in the corner. I rushed toward it, not thinking, just acting on instinct. If I could find something, a tool, a weapon, a means to regain some semblance of control, I had to try. Ripping the cabinet open, a musty smell hit me, mingling with a faint metallic scent. My hands rummaged frantically through the supplies, pushing aside expired bandages and empty vials. "Why not play?" the whispered voices teased, brushing against my ears, and I could feel despair clawing at my throat. Finally, I found something, a rusty flashlight. I didn't waste time. I flipped the switch, it flickered, throwing yellow beams across the room, catching the unsettling contours of the walls. I turned, and the presence loomed larger, the shadow spilling further into the space, darkening every corner. "Let us see how you like the light," I shouted defiantly, pointing the flashlight toward that familiar outline in the corner. Suddenly, laughter erupted, a cacophony of childlike glee that twisted my stomach. The shadow writhed back, retreating into the darkness, but it was fleeting, and I could feel the weight of the atmosphere thickening. The mocking giggles echoed all around me. "You'll regret that," it hissed, and the lights flickered ominously. My pulse quickened. I had to get out. I was losing the edge as the shadows surrounded me again, closing in. With renewed focus, I raced toward the door, still gripping the flashlight tightly. There had to be a way to escape the game, a way to end this nightmarish experience that felt relentless. That I slammed against the door, feeling it buckle slightly. Desperation flooded my veins, and I rammed my shoulder against the frame. The door swung inward painfully, and I tumbled into the hallway. But once again, I was met with only silence. Panting, I pushed myself to my feet, feeling slightly triumphant. I had escaped something for now, but I knew they were still coming. I raced down the corridor, the fluorescent lights blinking in a stuttered rhythm, every pulse like a taunt. I had to find another exit. Room 210 caught my eye. The elderly woman, Anna, had mentioned the girl. Maybe she held the key to understanding all of this. I approached the door cautiously, ready for anything, but at the last moment, I caught the flickering of movement behind me. I spun around and saw the little girl again, standing just a few feet away. The smile was gone, replaced by an expression that mirrored 1,000 lost souls. "You can't leave us," she said, and I felt my resolve waver under her gaze. The shadows shifted behind her, a wave moving toward me, closing in, thickening the air surrounding us. "Why?" I asked, the desperation creeping into my voice. "What do you want?" "Play," she whispered, and it was less of a word, more an invocation, a demand. "Play what?" I pressed, my mind racing, unsure if I would have the strength to confront whatever this game was. "Stay," she replied, "stay forever." "Anna!" I called out, a flimsy lifeline of hope. My heart prayed she could help end this twisted nightmare. The girl's figure dimmed as I rushed past her, navigating the swirling shadows that felt as if they were toying with me, propelling me toward room 210. I flung the door open, but the room was dark, shrouded in curtains, and I immediately felt the absence of light pressing down. My heart dropped. No Anna was in sight. Shadows slithered against the walls, creeping forward as if sensing my fear. "Anna!" I shouted again, stepping deep into the claustrophobic gloom. For a moment, I felt the oppressive darkness pulse, and I thought I spotted her frail form in the corner, but it was gone before I could get there. And when I heard it, the giggle again, right behind me. Turning quickly, I found the girl smiling, the darkness shifting and swirling as if conspiring next to her. "You're supposed to be with us. It's more fun." The walls trembled, shadows danced at the edge of vision. I didn't even think, I sprang toward the curtain, the light switch sparkling like a beacon of refuge. Desperation fueled my trembling fingers. I had to find Anna. But as I flipped the switch, I was greeted with darkness. Everything around me dimmed even further, and I felt the suffocating weight of the shadow that cloaked me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a failed lifeline of technology, an echo from the outside world that seemed futile. "Help!" I screamed, tears of frustration spilling from my eyes. I was afraid the game was nearing its end. "Help me! Someone, please!" But no answer came. Just the taunting echoes of laughter. I stumbled back, and the girl stepped forward, the shadows around her swirling like smoke. "You can't escape your fate," she declared, voice sweet and sinister. "You're one of us now." I pressed against the wall, my heart pounding, bombarded by each laughing specter. I felt the pulse of that dark energy crawling within the weight of their playful torment. I had to figure it out. I had to break this cycle, but was it too late? Outside, everything felt so close yet impossibly far away. A normal hospital, the usual sounds of life muffled by the insistent whisper of shadows. I was trapped, circling back to them, and in these last moments, I caught a glimpse of Anna. She was resolute, but her eyes reflected the same fright that twisted inside of me. As I stood there, uncertainty clawing at my insides, I realized I might never know how to end this. Would I join their game? Would I fight to escape? Or was this the price of trying to help those who never really left? In that silence, as I stared at the girl, a thought began to bloom. Perhaps, within these walls, the real question was not how to escape but whether I wanted to remain. I moved closer, stepping into the shadows, into that realm between light and dark. The laughter echoed behind me, fierce and inviting. The game had only just begun.